Okay, shalom, right. I have been down the rabbit hole with this one. Okay, this is very interesting. This starts to get really interesting and tie some really powerful concepts together. Obviously, I can't go through it all in this lesson, but we're going to make an introduction, a very intriguing introduction into a subject, and possibly raise some questions that need some further analysis. Some really interesting stuff. Start to break down some of the barriers that prevent a revelation of Yeshua, the truth regarding Yeshua Moshiach ben Yosef, and bring some unity between the house of Yosef and the house of Yehuda. So the rain that didn't come down, this is actually from last week's Torah portion, but it is related also to this week's Torah portion because of the rain. It rained down on them meat. Which is in Parashah Bashalach. But anyway, let's just go and have a deep dive into this. This mysterious rain that didn't come down, it's taken from this particular verse in Exodus. Moses went away from Pharaoh out of the city, and he spread out his hands to the Lord, and the thunder and the hail ceased, and the rain did not come down to earth. Okay, so there's mystical teachings involved in this particular rain. And then when you read Exodus Rabbah regarding this particular verse, it tells you when the hail finally did come down and the thunder. Okay. But it doesn't mention when this mysterious rain, that too did not come down, comes down. So we're going to have a look into that because there's some very interesting words and there's some very interesting letters to do with some powerful concepts through the angel of the Lord, the whole concept of Metatron, for example, because these three letters, U, Mator, Mem, Tet, Resh, are obviously the three main letters of the word Metatron, also, or the Metatar, the guide that guides us on the way. Okay, the angel of the Lord, basically. All these concepts that we've gone over, the Prince of the World, the Prince of the Face, Moshiach ben Yosef, Metatron, the whole world of Yetzirah. There's lots of connections between all these very powerful mystical concepts. But what is this rain that did not come down? From Exodus 9:33. And if you do go read the Midrash Rabbah on that, it, like I say, it only tells you about the thunder that doesn't come down or the hail that doesn't come down. Actually, I'll just go quickly read you it so that you know it does not mention about this rain that didn't come down. So what is the, if the hail is so significant that it ceased and sort of was suspended up in heaven for a future time, what about this rain then? What happened to the rain? The Midrash Rabbah doesn't inform us of this. There may be some other teachings that do, but I wasn't able to find it at the same locations where I found answers for the hail that didn't come down. It's all mystical secret teachings. It's all coded messages. Okay, so I'll go read the Exodus Rabbah. Okay, so I've got a couple of interesting things just to point out. I've just gone and had a look at the verse from within the actual Torah portion, and there is a note on here. This is the Stone's interlinear Chumash. Very, very good, by the way, for learning the Hebrew, the interlinear. And it actually says, just let me put that down. It actually says as a note, and the rain had never been mentioned as part of the hail. So this was the plague of the hail, but the rain had not previously mentioned until this point that we're told that the rain didn't come down either. So this rain that is suddenly part of the plague of the hail did not come down, and the hail ceased also. So bear that in mind. This is just the first time the rain is mentioned as part of this plague. It says the rain had never been mentioned as part of the hail. However, the sages teach that when Moshe prayed for suspension of the plague, any hail that was falling to earth was suspended in midair. That's Rashi. It would have been expected, therefore, that those hailstones would have melted and turned to rain. But even this rain was miraculously prevented from falling to earth. That's Rabbi Hirsch. So we know that there's something significant. This hail, and by the way, the letters for hail are barad, and barad can be the words barad can be rearranged for davar, which means word, and it's sometimes associated with a harsh word as well, you know, as opposed to Wayoma and Amar. It's a harsher word, if you like, Barad and Davar. So all these things, bear them in mind. So the Barad can rearrange to Davar, as we can see up here, look. Barad, Waha Barad, and you can get Devara, as in Davara Torah, word of Torah. So this is now the Midrash Rabbah. I'm just going to read a small section of it that explains what happens to this Barad that then turns into a rain. And we know Barad can rearrange to a word. Okay, so all mysterious codes for us to unlock right at the end. When right at the end? Well, when this hail is due to come down, and this hail that's melted into rain is due to come down. So Moses went out from Pharaoh from the city, and he stretched out his hand to Hashem. The thunder and the hail ceased. If Moses had left the entire city, he clearly had left Pharaoh's palace. Why then must the verse specify that he went out from Pharaoh? The Midrash explains. The connotation of this phrase is that when Moses was still within the environs of the city, immediately upon having departed from Pharaoh, he did not rely any further before praying for the Egyptians. Rather, he stretched out his hands to Hashem in supplication. Okay, so this is at this point he's talking about the rain that is to cease. And the Holy One, blessed be He, straightway accepted his prayer, and the thunder and hail ceased. And then it goes on, Umatar lo nitach artso, and the rain did not reach the earth. The verse implies that even the hailstones that were already raining down from the sky did not hit the earth. Where did they go? The Midrash explains, God hung the hailstones in a state of suspension. And when did they eventually descend? In the days of Joshua, they fell upon the Amorites. As scripture states, it happened when they fled before Israel. They were on the descent of Beth Horon when Hashem cast upon them large stones from heaven. And they died, more died, through the hailstones than the children of Israel killed with the sword. And that's Joshua 10:11. And then it goes on to say, so we know some of these hail that ceased, that didn't come down, came down as stones and killed the Amorites during the time of Yeshua. And that's written about Joshua 10 verse 11. But then it goes on to say, very interesting, and the remaining hailstones, but it doesn't actually say hailstones, that's added to, were ha-sha'ar atidin le-red bimei Gog and Magog. And the remaining, even this word that they've used is very intriguing in here. I think I might bring it up for you. And the remaining hailstones are destined to descend in the days of Gog and Magog. Right, I just had a look. I didn't even notice that word that they've used for and the remaining. I'm going to bring this up. Just wait a minute. Oh, okay, right. Well, we're up and running again. Sorry about that. Right, so I've just brought this up because I didn't realise myself, but these letters here are for remaining are very, very relevant to what we're going to be talking about today. This is a very key word, Shin Aleph Resh. So the remaining hailstones is not actually included, but it's inferred from what's said previously, are destined to descend in the days of Gog and Magog, bearing in mind that the final battle of Gog and Magog is the battle of our own mind. And what influences our mind? Teaching. Okay. Teaching influences our mind. And especially this word of Gog and Magog is very much related to the concept of Armilus, the anti-Moshiach, and very much related to the concept of the false Moshiach, the Gog and Magog war. And it is the final battle, and it's the battle of Moshiach ben Yosef, the battle Moshiach ben Yosef has to fight and win. Okay, this is all according to Vilna Gaon in his Kol Hator. Right, so let's just have a quick look at these, and then we're going to have a deep dive into some of these words. This word, sa'ar, we're going to have a look at that, see how it's related to this concept of matar, raining down. Okay, it's all very interesting. You'll see how it all ties up. Really, really interesting things. Coded messages that we need to unlock now. And even this is incredible to me, because you'll see how relevant it is, this whole concept of and the remaining hair souls are destined to descend in the days of Gog and Magog. Right, so just a little brief indication of some of the gematria, but towards the end we're going to have a look at some even more incredible gematria, what this phrase is related to. It's all wonderful stuff, really interesting. And rain did not come down to earth, so this is Exodus 9:33. It's got all those numbers. I'm not going to go through, I'll just see which numbers I've picked out. Okay, so this one, on the day I will raise up the fallen tabernacle of David. So that comes to 1,696 regular, which is exactly the same as the regular and ordinal Mispah Gadol numbers, taking into consideration the final chaf, the Sophite letter that changes when it's on the end of a word, and it also changes value. This becomes a Mispah Gadol. So that is also equal to, on that day I will raise up the fallen tabernacle of David. So this is wholly opposite this rain that did not come down, but that will come down in the final battle of Gog and Magog. We need to be aware of this rain then, don't we? Because it's part of a curse, it's part of a plague that was plagued with Pharaoh and Egypt and exile. What else have we got? This is very interesting. We're going to get to this, but not actually in this lesson. I found some very mysterious feasts that the rabbis, it would appear, went to. They're very mysterious. I've done a big deep dive into it. I'll just briefly show you this particular passage from Sanhedrin 32b, part 10. It's very interesting. I only did that. I'd put this teaching together, and then I've been, like I say, going down the rabbit hole and exploring more and more and more and unearthing more and more treasures, hidden treasures. And I came across this particular part of the Talmud with these two very mysterious festivals that mention Yeshua the Son. My heart is Yeshua the Son. It's written there in the Talmud. These festivals that these people went to. We'll go and have a look at this Sanhedrin 32b, but bearing in mind that Achar Hochmim, and after the time of the sages, in the time of the temple, to the chamber of the hewn stone. We need to go see that in context, but that is exactly the same as this rain that did not come down to earth, this teaching that did not come down to earth. So we can see that in a good way and a bad way. Okay, so some of the teaching, for example, some of the teaching that is likened to rain does need to come down, and some of it is suspended until the time of Gog and Magog. These kinds of teachings, as what's written in Sanhedrin 32b, were teaching, it would appear that they were godly teachings about Yeshua that have been suspended and not yet come down. Okay. All wonderful ways of looking at it. Let me just go show you this Sanhedrin 32b, however. Okay, so I'm going to show you this where I got about the hewn stone from. It's taken from Sanhedrin, but there's a very mysterious aspect to this, a very highly coded reference in here. I'm going to have to show you another mention of this particular festival in the Talmud for you to have an understanding what it's all about. In fact, I'll show you two very briefly. I'm going to do a deep dive into it, so not today, but some later day. But just to go to show you where are we heading with this. It's all connected to the rain and everything. Everything is connected. Okay, it's all very mysterious, and you're going to have to pay attention in order to follow this thread through, because it's taken me a long time to weave it all together to figure out exactly what this rain that didn't come down might be referring to. But it's so wonderful, the secrets that start to come out. So you've got this particular context. I'm just going to highlight the context. The context is Sanhedrin 32b, and it's talking about the sages taught, the verse states, justice, justice you shall follow. So bear in mind, what is justice? Justice is tzedek, which is related to Yosef, who was the righteous one. It's related to Yesod, and that's the foundation. That's related to the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef. So just bear that in mind. Justice, justice you shall follow. And also Metatron is the executive arm of justice, the left arm of the divine sphere of. Okay, so that's related to justice as well, Gevurah. In a way, it's more related to din than justice. I should point that out. So tzedek, this is definitely related to Yosef, justice, or righteousness you shall pursue. So we've already got with this, some indication it's talking about Yosef, or it's connected in some way to Yosef. This teaches that one should follow the best, most prestigious court of the generation. For example, follow after Rabbi Eliezer to Lod, after Rambam Yochanan ben Zakkai to Beror Hayil. Okay, now it gets mysterious, because now we're talking coded messages. In and amongst, don't forget the context is this justice, justice you shall pursue, or righteousness, righteousness, and that is definitely related to the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef. The sages taught when the gentle authorities issue decrees outline observance of the mitzvot, members of the Jewish communities devised clandestine ways of indicating observance of mitzvot to each other. For example, if one produces the sound of a millstone in the city called Berne, this is tantamount to announcing week of the sun. And that is Shavua haben. That's what's written there. And then this, what's written there is in bold letters, and then the rest is what's added. So there will be a circumcision if one displays the light of the lamp in the city called Beror Hayil. This is tantamount to announcing there is a wedding feast there, there is a wedding feast there. Okay, so it's all coded messages, and it's telling you what happened under Roman authority. We find out it's Rome not in this section, but in another section. And then it goes on again. It talks about this justice. So you've got to say, why is it placed between these two sections of the Talmud that are reiterating this concept? Tzedek, you shall follow. It's telling you follow the tzedek. Who was the ultimate righteous one? Yeshua HaMoshiach. Right, and we're going to look and show how in other parts of the Talmud it's very clear they are letting you know who the Son is. The sages taught the verse states, justice, justice shall you follow. This teaches that one should follow the sages to the academy where they are found. For example, follow after Rabbi Eliezer to Lod, after Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai to Beror Hayil, after Rabbi Yeshua in Pekain, after Rabbi Gamliel to Yavna, after Rabbi Akiva to Bnei Barak, after Rabbi Mattia to Rome, after Rabbi Hananiah ben Zeradion to Sikne, after Rabbi Yossi to Zipporai, after Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera to Netzivin, after Rabbi Yehoshua to the exile Goola, Babylonia, after Rabbi Yehuda and Nisai to Beth She'arim, and after the sages in the time of the temple to the chamber of the hewn stone. Okay, the chamber of the hewn stone. So that's where I got this part that I've just analysed that is linked to this rain that's coming down. So they're telling you to follow these righteous ones. But in and amongst all these righteous ones, something's taking precedence. We're talking about this going to this particular festival. There's this mystery. You've got to go to the week of the sun, the week of the sun. Let's go and have a look at somewhere else in the Talmud where this particular festival is mentioned in different contexts. We need to look at two other places in the Talmud where this is mentioned, by the way. Okay, so this is taken from another part of the Talmud, Bava Batra 60b. It says, the Bright continues, to anyone who mourns for the destruction of Jerusalem will merit to see its joy, as it is stated, rejoice with Jerusalem, be glad in her, all that love her rejoice for joy with her, all that mourn for her, Isaiah 66:10. So this is talking about the time after the destruction of the temple, this time of mourning for Jerusalem, because the temple has been destroyed at this point. It is taught in a Bereta, Tosefta Sota 15:10, that Rabbi Ishmael ben Elisha said, from the day the temple was destroyed, by right we should decree upon ourselves not to eat meat, not to drink wine, but the sages do not issue a decree upon the public unless the majority of the public is able to abide by it. From the day that the wicked kingdom, i.e. Rome, spread, who decree evil and harsh decrees upon us and nullify Torah study and the performance of mitzvah honors for us, and do not allow us to enter the celebration of the first week of the sun. So we've got this concept again, Shavua Haben. Okay, Shavua Haben. And it's up here, look. The congregation of the meeting to enter into the congregation of Lishavua Haben, the week of the sun. And that's interpreted by the sages now as circumcision, but the sages question this. In other areas of Talmud and Tosefta and things like that, they question it. Okay, that it can't possibly mean circumcision. That's just what they've included, is talking about the week of the sun. And then the next one says, and some say to the celebration of the salvation of a firstborn son. But the actual Hebrew up here is Wa'omri le Lishua haben. And some say Yeshua the Son. So there's some festival that is called the Week of the Sun. And in other places, the sages write that this happens at Motzi Shabbat, which is the end of Shabbos, the first day of the week, where there's this gathering in Jerusalem called the Week of the Sun. Okay. And there's also mentioned here, well, what sun? And then it actually says the word Wa'omri la li shua haben. Some say this week of the sun, some say that it is for Yeshua the Son. Yeshua the Son. Okay, so after the destruction of the temple, and this is what I talked about before, on Tisha B'Av, Yeshua should have been declared as the Moshiach, and obviously the sages all knew by this time that it was. Why did they know by Tisha B'Av that Yeshua was the Moshiach? Because Yeshua prophesied the temple would be destroyed. Not only that, he said, when you see these signs, flee. And the followers of Yeshua saw the signs that he had predicted, and at one point in the siege of Jerusalem, the siege was lifted. Okay, the siege was lifted before Vespasian took over that area and then brought about the destruction and things like that. Just wait a minute, have I got that right? Well, anyway, basically, the siege was lifted, and what happened was the believers in Yeshua recognised the signs that Yeshua had told them, and they fled. I go over all these details in a video that I just did about Tisha B'Av, by the way. They fled to a place called Pella, and they was all saved. Nobody died. This is a historical fact. That was a believer in Yeshua that all fled. When it came to the destruction of the temple, however, led by, it came to the destruction of the temple, lots of Jews sadly perished at that time. But also at that time then, the words of Yeshua came true. Okay, the words of Yeshua came true. And after his words came true, that the temple was destroyed, and the fact that his advice had caused such a salvation, then we knew that he was a true prophet. And on Tisha B'Av, he should have been revealed this is the Moshiach. Why? Because his prophecy came true, and 2, his words protected all his believers, whereas the Jewish people that didn't believe in him suffered a great amount of distress and death and slavery and things like that. It was a horrific time for Yehuda. Okay. So he should have been declared at that time. Now, obviously, the sages at this time were aware of that. And after the destruction of the temple, sorry, I've just had a cough. After the destruction of the temple, it looks like the sages began to gather to celebrate this particular festival called the Week of the Sun. Which sun? Yeshua the Son. Yeshua ha-ben. Okay. But Rome prevented these righteous ones from gathering. They prevented the righteous ones from gathering. To such a degree, so serious was this, that, as you can see if you carry on, I'm having a horrendous coughing fit today, for some reason, I don't know why. But anyway, it says, and from the day that the wicked kingdom Rome spread, whose evil degree and harsh decrees upon us, and nullified the Torah study and the performance of mitzvot. So this, imagine, you've got them nullifying the Torah and then the mitzvot, and then with that, Torah and mitzvot, they've got the mention of this particular festival as well. It's of such significance that it's mentioned to them alongside the nullification of the Torah and the nullification of the mitzvot by Rome. So what is so special about this particular gathering that happened in Jerusalem on Motzei Shabbat? You've got to go find that out from other sections of the Talmud. Okay, and the Megillah and things like that. So, and do not allow us to enter the celebration of the Week of the Sun, and some say, to Yeshua the Son. By right we should each decree upon ourselves not to marry women. So it's so serious, this breaking of the Torah, nullifying the Torah and the mitzvah, and preventing this gathering of the sages together in Jerusalem at Motzei Shabbat and things, with all this coded message that we've just seen. They've got to grind the millstones. It's a coded message. By right, we should decree upon ourselves not to marry a woman and not to produce offspring, and it will turn out that the descendants of Abraham, our father, will cease to exist on their own right, rather than being forced into a situation where there are sons who are not circumcised. This bit is added. It actually makes no sense because, it makes no sense that they would not marry and try and erase the descendants of Abraham simply because of them being parented to circumcise, because that would fall under this category, the nullification of Torah and mitzvah. We're talking about this not allowing them to gather for the Week of the Sun. It was something so significant that they gathered to acknowledge this celebration that's something to do with Yeshua the Son, that it was so bad it was better for him not to marry, and it was likened to the nullification of the Torah and the mitzvot. And it was Rome that stopped these Jews and these sages from celebrating whatever they were celebrating regarding this festival called the Week of the Sun, and also that it's called, or some say, Yeshua the Son, salvation of the Son. We know by this point it would have been very clear to the sages, though they would have recognised Yeshua, the one that they had put to death, was indeed the Moshiach, and that's been part of the mourning for the temple. This festival is somehow part of the mourning for the temple. Okay. It says, but concerning a situation such as this, following principle applies: leave the Jews alone and do not impose decrees by which they cannot abide. It is better that they be unwitting sinners who do not know what they are doing, is proper considering the circumstances, and not be intentional wrongdoers who marry and procreate despite knowing that they should not. So this is, when you talk about the Jews criticising a mention of not marrying in the New Testament, you've got this same thing here when the situation has descended to such a degree it's advisable not to marry, except that not everybody would be able to take that upon themselves. Just as like what Yeshua said. Not everybody can take this upon themselves not to marry. So here, like this, leave the Jews alone and don't oppose decrees by which they cannot abide. It's just as Yeshua said, about not marrying. But, not everybody can do it. It's right there in the Torah. It's right there in the Talmud. So either the Talmud is somehow trying to back up the words of Yeshua, even here. Even here. There's some kind of connection to what Yeshua said and what is written in the Talmud. Now let's go and have a look at something that's even more incredible than this. Right, so this is another mention in the Talmud of this week of the sun. That is Yeshua, but the language in this is even more phenomenal. So it's telling you now about actual rabbis, great sages that went to this said festival. Rav and Shmuel and Rav Aseh once happened to be present at a house where the celebration was being held, marking the passing of the week of the newborn son, i.e. circumcision. Bearing in mind that is argued and it's even contested by the sages themselves, it cannot refer to circumcision. And some say it was a house where a celebration was being held, marking the redemption of the firstborn son. Rav would not enter before Shmuel for reasons the Gemara will explain. So then it goes on to explain, but the language is not what it says. It tells you about the Rav. Rav u Shmuel were Rav Asi, happened to be, now this word, Libi Shvua Haben, were Omri La Libi Yeshua Haben. Okay, so the actual language in the Aramaic is Libi, my heart. It can be my heart. It's translated at the house, but the letters Lamed, Bet, Yod are Libi. Libi means my heart. Lev, heart, and E, my. Libi Shavua Haben, my heart. The week of the sun, and some say, oops, just wait a minute, it's coming up without way. And some say it is my heart, Yeshua the Son. My heart, Yeshua the Son. Okay. And that's really just confirming the week of which son? Well, the son called Yeshua. Yeshua the Son. It's very clear. Yeshua, they've translated that as redemption of. But that is not the word for redemption. That Yeshua is the word for salvation. Redemption is usually used as the word pidion. Redemption. So you've got to understand what is actually written there. Levei, this must be to the house or at the house. But really those same words in Hebrew, libi, is my heart, Yeshua the Son. That is what is written. And when it says my heart the week of the sun, and some say or at the house of the week of the sun, this celebration, it's then confirming exactly which son. Some say it is at the house of Yeshua the Son, a festival for Yeshua the Son. And then in other times it's mentioning this the gathering of the bones. So whether that's something to do with the relics of Yeshua, I don't know, but he's got the whole concept of the bones of Yosef. It's all very intriguing. It all needs a deep dive, but that's just for tasters. But let's have a look at the gematria of this, because this is even more astounding. I've got the gematria here. This will be the regular gematria. So it's 2 times 1612, which is the same as Hebrew youth, Na'ari Vri, which comes to a square ordinal of 1612. Who is the Hebrew youth? That would be Yosef. That's Yosef. Okay, so we've got this connection again to Yosef the Tzaddik. And then we've got this part of it. Rav and Shmuel and Rav Asi once happened to be present at a house where this celebration was occurring, called the Week of the Sun, or, Yeshua the Son. And some say, anyway, it's there, you can read it. it comes to a regular of 2,335, which is 5 times 467. What is 467? The regular and ordinals, because he was a son of his old age. He's talking about Yeshua. A week of a newborn son, talking about this. So this Levei Yeshua haben, which can be my heart, the week of the son, or some say it is my heart, Yeshua the son. And that comes to a regular of 1,254 plus 255 ordinal, come together 1,509, which is exactly the same as Yosef is still alive. The square ordinal mispagadol of Yosef is still alive, so taking into consideration the Sophite letters, 1,509. Exactly the same. Yosef is still alive. This is what they were celebrating. They were celebrating Yosef was still alive. Okay. And this as well. Give truth to Yaakov. When Yaakov has got the additional vav, i.e. he has got the vav that represents the truth that Eliyahu Hanavi gives over to him, Titen and Methli Yaakov. That also comes to 1,509. In the actual text, it doesn't include that Yaakov, but 5 times in the Tanach, Yaakov has got the additional vav, and it's Yaakov rectified with the truth that Yosef is still alive. So Yosef is still alive, 1,906. If we add that truth, Od Yosef Chai, into Yaakov's name, then this phrase from Torah, Titen Emeth Li Yaakov, one of the 13 attributes of mercy, comes to 1,509. Okay? 3 times Esav filled to this filling. Okay? Esav needs to be subdued. The only way that it can be subdued is when Yaakov has got the truth, Od Yosef Chai. And then there's unity between Esav and Yaakov in Israel and the nations, and the good inclination, the bad inclination, front and back. So we've got Esav plus Yaakov united, come to 558. And this number here, the regular and the ordinal, 1,674, is 3 times 558. Okay? So they knew something and they left us a highly coded message. And we're living in times where the darkness is so dark that even when you show people this, the penny still doesn't drop. They haven't got. See, it needs to be spelt out so clearly, and we need the power of the Gematria in order to reveal what was left and written for us by the hand of divine providence, we've got to assume. And then with that, we can start to discern what was actually left for us. What does this wisdom really mean? And as we can see, the Gematria clearly points to what this wisdom means. So this is something to really bear in mind. And like I say, there's lots of other things that you can find out about this particular festival that they had on Motzi Shabbat in Jerusalem at the destruction of the after the destruction of the temple, that's somehow connected to a son called Yeshua. Okay, and it's there in the Talmud. Not once, not just once, but on a number of occasions. Right, so now we can go back, and there's been a bit of a detour. That, by the way, I had not planned to say any of what I've just shown you. That was going to come out another day, so you've had a real treat there. You've had a real treat. I wasn't really prepared for that, so I'm hoping I'll probably come back to it at a later date and go over it, because there's so many wonderful things. It ties into other concepts. Okay, so bearing in mind the teaching that didn't come down and didn't make its way to us, the teaching that's heavenly teaching, and then the teaching that's something else, the teaching that represents a reign that is associated with the war of the Gog and Magog, the war for our mind, basically. Okay, so let's go and have a look further into this concept. Bearing in mind, we're going to be looking at this word here, matar, reign, because like I say, it's got the same letters for Metatron. And we need to start to link all these concepts up now. Okay? And also bearing in mind this word Sa'ar and the remaining Waha Sa'ar, the remaining that are destined to descend Lired, Gog and Magog, during the days of Gog and Magog. And that's from Exodus Rabbah, the Midrash Rabbah for Exodus 12:7. Okay, let's go and have a look at this. I'm going to have to turn myself off now with the video. Okay, so I've really brought this up because it's a lexicon and it shows you this word in Aramaic. Now, this is Syriac Aramaic, and it shows you reigned, metar, and then matar, and then matara, a watch. And I wanted to bring it up. I'm going to do it in the Aramaic text because I know that a lot of people won't be able to read this. I can't even read this fully. But it's got some wonderful... The thing with this lexicon is it's got some wonderful links to actual scripture that is very, very useful. And I go and have a look at this Acts 12 especially. There's got something going on there that's very interesting regarding this concept of to guard, which is linked to the word Metatron. So he's the angel that guards us on along the way. So there's connections, and we'll see the connections. I mean, it's also connected to this concept of rain. You know, the good rain that's a teaching, but also the bad rain, like what we're talking about, this rain that didn't come down, but is destined to come down and do battle with us in Gog and Magog, and also battle with our brains. And it's somehow connected to Armilos, and it's somehow connected to Moshiach ben Yosef, because the war of Gog and Magog, according to Vilna Gaon, is connected to Armilos. It's where Moshiach ben Yosef fights Armilos, fights the false Moshiach. Okay, and hopefully, as Vilna Gaon says, he beats him and lives. Okay, because there's other there's other prophecy that says that he dies, but Vilna Gaon is quite specific on the matter. He says that he actually lives. Od Yosef Chai. Yosef is still alive. They were celebrating it, obviously, back at the destruction of the temple. The sages had finally figured it out, but then there was prevented by the Romans themselves from having anything to do with this congregation, this gathering, for the son called Yeshua. Right, so let's have a look at this. So this is the Aramaic, but with the Ashritic text, so it's easier for us to read. So you've got matar, which is rained down, like the meat that was rained down, like this rain that didn't come down but is due to come down during Gog and Magog. But it's the verb to rain, and it's also the noun rain, isn't it? And it's also this word matara, what we've just looked at, matara, which means guard. This is connected to Metatron, as we're going to see. Okay. Let's go and have a look at some verbs. So this is very interesting. So Psalm 78:27. He rained down flesh upon them like dust, and like the seas of the sand, winged fowl. Okay, so we've got umater, yamter, so we've got them letters again, mem, tet, resh. Like all these, he rained down upon them like dust, ka'afar, se'er. And in this instance, these three letters mean meat. We're going to have a look at we're going to have a look online shortly at the Strong's Concordance for this, and then we'll also have a look and see that word remaining was also those three letters, weren't it? We just had a look at Exodus Rabbah, and the rain that remained, we used the Waha Sa'er as well. Those three letters were used to describe the rain that remained and didn't come down, that didn't descend, but will descend for Gog and Magog. So it was like dust, meat, flesh, sa'er, uchahol, yomim, and like the sand of the seas, of kanof, winged birds. Okay? I wanted to pick that up to show you that they used this word rained in regard to the teaching regard to the meat that they wanted instead of the simple bread from heaven. Okay. And then this is also connected, this word for flesh is also connected to strong leaven. It says, for 7 days you shall eat unleavened cakes, but on the preceding day you shall clear away all leaven from your houses. So, tashbitu sa'or mi botechem, from your houses. Okay, for whoever eats leaven, ki kol echel chometz. So this is the usual word for leaven, chometz. But the strong leaven here is called sa'or. And as we can see, it's the same word for this meat, sa'er, same letters. And also the same letters for that word for the rain that remained in the sky, sa'er. Okay. For whoever eats leaven from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. Exodus 12:15. So we've got these letters, keep them in mind. We're looking at the matar and we're looking at this leaven that is rained down and the meat that is rained down. Sorry, we're looking at the leaven and we're looking at the meat and we're thinking about the rain that remained. My lesson will drip like rain. My word will flow like dew, like storm winds on vegetation and like raindrops on grass. Deuteronomy 32:2. So this is just to point out that the teaching of Yotewaweh is also like rain. My lesson, Ya'aref kemotar, like rain. So just to make that connection between the lessons of God that he rains down and this other rain that will come down at the Gog and Magog, the battle of our minds, that remained, and it's connected to this phrase here, sa'or. Okay, and we've got this to show how teaching can be also linked to leaven. It says, he but said to them, take heed, beware of the yeast or the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees. So you've got this word here, chomira. Chomira is Aramaic for sa'or, and I'll show you that now. So you've got this phrase about the Pharisees. Okay, so let's just go and have a look at this next section. So this is taken from Targum Onkelos. I'll show you which verse it is, sorry. We're going to have a look at this, and I'll show you that this word chamira, the yeast, is related to sa'or and not chometz. It's related to this, that is related to this meat that they craved. It's also related to the rain that remained. Okay? Let's go and have a look. So Targum Onkelos, this is Aramaic. This is the verse that we've just had a look at. Verse Exodus 12:15, but in this time it's in Aramaic instead of English, Hebrew. So we've got Shivat Yomim Batir Tichlun Baram Biyoma. It says you must eat matzah for 7 days, but before the first day you must nullify all leaven from your homes. So we've got here to vatlun, nullify. Oops. Oh, come on, go back. To nullify, to vatlun, homira. So we knew from the Exodus 12:15 in the Hebrew, that word homira was se'or, strong leaven. Mi bateichon arei kol diyechol homi o. So this is about not eating. For anyone who eats chometz, and that word for chometz is homi o. So there's a difference between homira, which is sa'or, the shin alif resh, and homi o, which is chametz. Bearing in mind also chametz is tzemech backwards, and tzemech is one of the names of Moshiach, and sa'or backwards is rosh, means head. So there's a connection even in that, isn't there? You get it the right way around, and you're going to be all right, because Tzemach is actually a very elevated status. Just wait a minute, I'll put myself back on now. You've got Tzemach is a very elevated status, because this is a status of perpetual growth. Tzemach means branch. It's one of the names of Moshiach, and it's where we're continually growing, and there's no descending. Like the rain is due to descend, okay, and we descend into exile, but we reach a state of messianic consciousness where we're continually growing. It's just ascent after ascent after ascent. There's no more shrinking back. We're just like growing like a tree, year after year after year. Okay, like an ever-flowing, ever-flourishing tree planted by streams and rivers and things like that. Okay, that's the state that we will attain. We're attached to messianic levels of consciousness. So, chametz, backwards, is tzemach. Okay, not quite, is it chametz? Yes, it is tzemach. Okay, so, and like I say, sa'ar backwards is rosh, head. We're to be the head and not the tail. It's got to get things in the right order. You get this teaching in the right order, you're going to be reaching these messianic levels. The leaven will be turned into, the chametz will be turned into tzemach, and the sa'ar will be turned into rosh. It will make us the head and not the tail. Okay, so I'll leave you with the rest of that. Let's go and have a look what else we've got then. Okay, so this is interesting now, because going back to, we're going to be having a look at those words that we saw, the matar and the matara, the rain, and also the fact that the word rain means guard. Let's just go and have a look and refresh ourselves. So we've got this, haven't we? The Aramaic for matar, rain, matar, to rain, and then the rain, and motara, which means to guard. Okay, because this is talking about the rain that didn't come down, that remained, that wahasar, remained. So we already have a look at the Targum Onkelos to show that this word here, homira, is exactly the same as sa'ar, and that is related down here. Homira is sa'ar. Okay, sa'ar. So we can transfer, like I say, we can transform this leaven. We've got to transform it round so that it becomes rosh, the head, and not the tail. And tzemach, and not chametz. Okay, so there's all kinds of mysterious codes even in that. It's all beautiful, so perfect. Right, so we're going to get to this. This is an incredible phenomenon, by the way, Sefer Toldoth Yeshua, because this is a very, very ancient Jewish text that basically gives a story that's very contrary to the actual Gospels. Okay, Sefer Toldoth Yeshua. It's a whole teaching just on this, but I'm going to put some links in the comments. If you're interested in understanding more about this concept, I am actually going to explore it a little bit more in some other lessons. I can't get through it all in this lesson, but I just want to take something that's written in this Sefer Toldoth Yeshua. This is where we get the concept of Yeshua from, i.e. the curse by which Yeshua was cursed. Yimach Shemo Zikro, may his name and his memory be erased. Okay, and it's very much linked to this book, this very ancient Jewish book that tells about the beginnings of Christianity, and also the life according to Yeshua, the life of Yeshua according to these sages who put this book together. Okay. It says the sages desired to separate from Israel those who continued to claim Yeshua as the Messiah. So the believers in Yeshua. It was the sages ultimately. Who did they get to do that then? Well, it looks like they got the Romans themselves to do it, didn't they? Because the sages in the Talmud have given us some indication that the Romans stopped them celebrating anything to do with Yeshua. the sages themselves wanted this separation to occur. So the sages desired to separate from Israel those who continued to claim Yeshua as Messiah, and they called upon a greatly learned man, Shimon Kepha, Simon Peter, for help. Simon went to Antioch, main city of the Nazarenes, and proclaimed to them, I am a disciple of Yeshua. He has sent me to show you the way. I will give you a sign as Yeshua has done. Shimon, having gained the secret of the ineffable name, healed a leper and a lame man by means of it, and thus found acceptance as a true disciple. He told them that Yeshua was in heaven at the right hand of his Father in fulfillment of Psalm 110:1, and he added that Yeshua desired that they separate themselves from the Jews and no longer follow their practices, as Isaiah had said, your new moons and your feasts my soul abhorreth. Okay. They were now to observe the first day of the week instead of the seventh, the resurrection instead of the Passover, the ascension into heaven instead of the Feast of Weeks, the finding of the cross instead of the New Year, the Feast of the Circumcision instead of the Day of Atonement, the New Year instead of Hanukkah. They were to be indifferent with regard to circumcision and the dietary laws. Also, they were to follow the teaching of turning the right if smitten on the left and the meek acceptance of suffering. All these new observances which Shimon Kepha, or Paul as he was known to the Nazarenes, taught them were really meant to separate these Nazarenes from the people of Israel and to bring the internal strife to an end. So we can see, according to the Jewish, say the books found within Judaism, rabbinical Judaism, this Sefer Toldoth Yeshua, whatever authority is given to it within rabbinical Judaism, it's quite significant authority, I might add. It finds connection right the way back to the Shulchan Aruch. So that's another lesson, but the Shulchan Aruch is the main authority for halakha within rabbinical Judaism, and there's connection to this Sefer Toldoth Yeshua in there. So that's the level of authority that's given to this book. Okay, and certainly what's written about Shimon Kepha finds connection to the Shulchan Aruch, the authority of the Shulchan Aruch, and also Rashi commented on it. So Rashi is one of the greatest sages of all. So the level of authority placed on these books to be found within rabbinical Judaism, it would appear are very, very high. Okay. So what do you make of that then? So we've been the New Testament teachings. When you put this all together with what's written in the Shulchan Aruch and Rashi commentaries, basically it says Simon Peter, Paul and John were all infiltrators, all Jewish infiltrators that took in false teachings to corrupt Christianity and bring about a separation from the Jews and the believers. That's what it boils down to when you look at it completely in context. Okay, it wasn't just Simon Peter, as it says here, also known as Paul, but also it's also connected to John. There's other references that put Simon Peter, Paul and John all together as infiltrators, purposefully meant to bring in teachings that were in error, that were contrary to Torah, that were contrary to mitzvot, that brought about a separation from believing Jews and non-believing Jews. And that is exactly what happened. And it would appear that that was absolutely intended to. Simon Kepha became the first pope of Rome. Okay, he was a Jewish infiltrator, according to the Jews' own teaching. So why did they do that then? Because ultimately it's the will of Yod-Heh-Waw here. It's the will of Yod-Heh-Waw to separate the camps into two camps, Yehuda and Yosef, because they were going up against Esau, and they needed to have two camps, lest one perish. One would then survive. So how did they bring about that separation? They brought it about by false teachings and then banning the Jews from having anything to do with Yeshua. Just as we saw, but the sages were obviously aware of this, and they obviously knew truly who the Moshiach is, and they had to leave a coded trail in the Talmud that would eventually at the right time lead us back to the truth. Somehow they've left a paper trail for us to figure out exactly what was talking about. When you start to put it all together, you start to realise they had to come up with something to bring about a separation, but you've got to hope that at one level they was just aware of the severity of the exile that was going into, that was going to face Esav, and just as Yaakov split his family into two camps, you've got to think the sages, going by what they saw was coming up, that we were going to go into Roman exile, knew that we had to split these two camps up, and it was getting quite obvious. Yeshua even himself said, I've come only for the lost house of Yosef. So they must have known at that point, just wait a minute, we've been split into two camps and we have to do something very serious to cause a separation. So maybe even maybe they were conscious of what they had to do, maybe it was subconsciously, but that separation into two camps had to occur, and this is the way it occurred. We can see it through Toldoth Yeshu, and we know there's no way the Jews can accept these corrupted teachings that we now call the New Testament, the Pauline teachings, the teachings from John even, these are questioned. How much corruption is there in the New Testament that is contrary to Torah? It's very hard for us to understand. We've got to come together. We've got to try and figure out, maybe somewhere there's a copy of the original Hebrew scriptures. I've got a very good friend who's putting together from all kinds of different sources the Hebrew gospel, the original Hebrew gospel, and it's absolutely wonderful. We're going to have to go back to some original teachings that we can all agree upon that are definitely in keeping with the Torah, the original good news. Because it's very clear that what we've got now is a corrupted version of the good news, it would appear, if we are to take this seriously at all. And I think we should take it seriously, because it's very clear that the teachings in the New Testament, to a large degree, a lot of them are actually contrary to what is written in the Torah. There's some things that are acceptable and there's some things that are not. We were never meant to depart from the Shabbat. We were never meant to stop kosher. Things like that. We were always meant to keep the festivals as written in the Torah. But all these, it would appear there was some infiltration to cause about a division between the house of Yosef and the house of Judah. The two camps got split. Okay, so all interesting stuff. Right. Bearing this in mind, there is reference to Shimon Kepha in Acts. I'm not the greatest authority when it comes to the New Testament, because I abandoned it. I realised there was something in error because it didn't align up with the Torah. I abandoned my entire faith in Yeshua, as I've talked about a lot, for 7 years, and I went purely towards Orthodox Judaism, going to the synagogue every single week, learning Hebrew, going to Israel 20 times, and I abandoned my faith in Christianity altogether. And then I've come back, but trying to understand Yeshua only from a Torah perspective. And then if the New Testament aligns with what's actually written and provable in Torah, then I will believe the New Testament. But if I can't find what is written in the Torah, what's written in the New Testament within the Torah, I've got to assume that it's not the truth. Let's go and have a look at this then regarding Simon Peter, because we've got this word rain coming up here. The word for guard, which is connected to that word for rain. Let's go back. Just so we're really clear on this. These words here, Matara, guard, this whole concept of Metatron, the guardian angel that's linked to Matar. We can see that in the sequence of this lexicon, Aramaic lexicon. Okay, Matar, Matara, guard. Right, now let's go and have a look. Bearing in mind what we've just read regarding Shimon Kepha from this book, Sefer Toldoth Yeshu. And now let's go and have a look at this, chapter 12. So we can see in the Aramaic, this is the whole story of, let me just read it. I'll have to read it from, it's Acts 12, isn't it? Acts 12. I'll have to read it all from here because it's not easy to read it from this interlinear version. Acts 12:1. Okay, so it says, okay, between Shimon and 2. Okay, so it's Shimon Kefer, isn't it, here? Shimon Kefer. Let's see if it mentions it in this Hebrew version. In 3, Shimon Kefer. Okay, I don't think I've got the right one then, have I? No, that's 11. Sorry about this. I just saw that and I thought it would be easier if I read something else. Okay, so right, it says, now about the time Herod the king stretched forth his hands to vex certain of the church, and he killed James the brother of John with the sword. Okay. And because he saw it pleased the Jews, he proceeded further to take Peter also. These were the days of the unleavened bread. Okay, we're up to here then, aren't we? In the Aramaic, it's just, in the Hebrew, it just mentions Peter. In the Aramaic, it's very clear, it's Shimon Kefer, Simon Peter. And when he saw that pleased this, the Judeans proceeding he was to seize also Shimon Kefer, and they were the days of the unleavened bread. And he arrested him and he cast him in the house, prisoner, and delivered him, okay, to 16 soldiers. So this is a coded message for something. Bearing in mind what we've got in Sefer Toldoth Yeshu, the corruption regarding the teachings of the New Testament. And when you go into the book of Sefer Yeshu, Toldoth Yeshu further, it links it also to the teachings of the New Testament that were infiltrated, that was corrupted by the Jews to cause that separation. They was corrupted through these infiltrators, Shimon Kefer, Paul and John. Okay, and Shimon Kefer could have been Paul, by the way, what it says here. So, to guard him, so 16 soldiers to guard him, the notar honor, to guard him. So you've got a word very similar here to the word matara, to guard. Okay. It's similar. It begins with a nun instead of a mem, but there is a definite connection to it. So to guard him, and we saw that word to guard is connected to reign also. To guard him from that, after Passover, he would be delivered to the people of Judea. And while was Shimon guarded, so now you've got the met natar, guarded, he was in the house a prisoner. Prayer continual offered was by the church for him to God. And in that night, when toward dawn going he was to hand him over, while asleep was Shimon between 2 officers, and bound he was in 2 chains, and the others, not 3, keeping or guarding they were the gate of the house of the prison. The angel of Jehovah stood over, and the light shone in the entire place, and he jabbed him in the side, and he raised him up, and he said to him, arise quickly, and fell the chains from his hands, and said to him, the angel, wrap your garment round your waist and put on your sandals. And he did thus. And again he said to him, wrap your cloak, come after me. And he went, and going he was after him. When not he knew it was real, was that which was happening was by the hand of the angel, thought he, for that a vision seeing he was. Okay, so the Aramaic is a little bit broken, but I hope you can follow it. And when they passed, Matar Ta, the watch. So Metatron is called the watchman of the night, and the night is split into so many watches, and night is associated with exile, day is associated with redemption. So matarto, you got the three words again, like what we have in rain, to guard or to watch, the watches of the night. Bearing in mind also, Yeshua went out on the water during the watches of a certain watch of the night. The first and the second, they came unto the gate of iron and opened it to them from will its own. And when they went forth and they passed street one, departed from him the angel. Okay, so I've read it as best as I can. I've just tried to highlight some points here that we're talking about this to guard the mem tet resh, and it's also linked to this notar nun tet resh as well. And then we've got this, the watch of the night is also mem tet resh, and we see how that is connected to rain. And why am I talking about this then? It's because the rain that came down was corrupted. You know, it's part of that rain. There's the teachings of Yotewawi, that the true teachings that are like rain, but then there's this counterfeit, isn't there? And it's a counterfeit, and it's somehow linked to the word Metatron. So there's a lot of teachings that are what you call Metatronic, and there's some other teachings regarding Yeshua that are basically synonymous with the concept of Metatron and the false teachings. They're not the truth regarding Yeshua Notzri. They're not the true good news. They're a distortion. They're an infiltrated teaching. They're making Yeshua Notzri look like this concept that's found within Judaism that's erroneous, and it's dualistic, and it's Metatronic. And they're making Yeshua as like a Metatronic figure, and that poses problems when it comes to the unity and the oneness of Yotewawi. Because what we say, you've got to understand, once you call something God, you make an idol of it. Once you call something not God, you also make an idol of it. Here's how it's done. This is God. So there you are, by definition, saying that is not. So the thing you call God is an idol, and it's a false God, because it doesn't fully include the entire of God. You're saying this is God, what this isn't. We are not allowed to point at God and say this is God. Even it's probably associated with the fact that his name is ineffable. You can't define what is undefinable. We've got to get our mind around that. When we say this is God and this is not, both what we call God is an idol and what we call not God is an idol. That's a false God. It's another idol. So you've got to get out of calling things God. Saying Jesus is God is a form of idol worship. Even when he represents his name, which he does, to limit God to a thing is to create an idol out of God that has no form whatsoever. So when we limit God to Jesus, we've made a big mistake, because we're saying we can point at it now. This is God. It's like the golden calf. You're God's, you can point at it. Once you get to something you can point at, you've created a false God. And not only that, all the other things that you're not pointing at become another God, and they themselves are then a false God. They are another God. You have to have no other gods before me. So we create an idol by saying something we can point at and see and perceive is God, and then by definition the rest is not. So we've got to be very careful. We can't point at God. We can't see this is God. God is hidden. We worship an invisible, unknowable God. We can't point at what we can't see. We can't define what we do not know. Except that his will is that we do know him. And we are being prepared to receive that revelation, but we are yet there. So when we've got these Metatronic teachings which are trying to define and measure God in some way within finite creation, we are creating an idol. When we measure God at all, in any way, shape or form, it's an idol. He's immeasurable and without form. So the fact that we try and define God in some way, give him some sort of measurement, contain him in some way, we're creating an idol. We've got to be careful. And there's a lot of teachings regarding Metatron that do just that. They are a measure of God. Even if it's just the concept of this is the extent to which we are able to perceive God in finite this is the limit to which we can perceive God in finite creation. We have got to know even the full limit of what we are able to perceive God is an idol. Until God himself perfects us and reveals an aspect of his own infinite essence called his oneness, until that oneness is revealed, everything other than that is an idol. And we haven't yet had that revelation of his oneness. We haven't yet, as a humanity, been prepared to receive that. We won't have it until Esav is subdued, because he's the vessel that enables us to contain that, the vessel of Shalom that enables us to contain that revelation of oneness. And until then, everything that we know of God, if we point at it or limit it or measure it or define it or say we know it, is an idol. We're in a process of being rectified so that we will be able to perceive him in truth. Until that moment is hidden. His oneness is hidden. We do not know God. We can only say that we don't know him and that he's invisible and hidden, because he is at this time. We can be conscious of, we can see beyond the veil to a certain degree, we can perceive to a certain degree, but anything before that moment of revelation is idol worship compared to the true revelation that we will ultimately receive, where we know God. Well, we certainly know that aspect of him that he has made knowable to us, and we will actually know an infinite aspect of God himself. Until then, everything's idol worship. And it's connected to this concept of Metatron that guides us on our way to some degree until we attain that level of perfection, that level of rectification. So there's a lot of teachings regarding Metatron that are in error. Okay, that's all I'm basically saying. Right, let's have a look at some more gematria. Right, I'm just going to go show you something. Just wait a minute. Right, this is an absolutely brilliant. I haven't fully read it all yet because I've really tried to analyse it completely. It's available on Academia. You can get an app actually on your phone, the Academia app. That's what I do. But this is it online. It's called called Metatron is not Enoch. Okay, because a lot of the teachings, the false teachings within Judaism, call Metatron Enoch. Metatron, I've done loads of teaching about it. I'm not going to go over there, but this particular article is by Yakir Paz, and it's Metatron is not God, reevaluating the evolution of the archangel. Okay, so I've got to go back and find my place now, what I was wanting to show you, because it's related to Metatron being a little bit considered in ancient writings a little bit like Yeshua. There's a connection between the concept of Metatron and Yeshua. It's all connected. Even Vilna Gaon says in his book Kol Hator, Metatron is Moshiach ben Yosef, and they're from the upper perfect light. There's all kinds of mysteries involved, but this is the rain that came down that messes with our minds, that creates the battle of the Gog and Magog within, that creates a false Messiah, and that we need the concept of the true Messiah to overcome it. The true concept of Moshiach ben Yosef, Yeshua HaNatzri. We've got to find that. How can we find that when the entire teachings that we've been given are corrupted? We've been shown. How can we get to the truth about Moshiach when we've been told this cosmic Christ through Paul that could be nothing more than, the Prince of the world, the angel of light? We've been totally and completely deceived. We need to get rid of the leaven. We need to get rid of the leaven, the false teachings that's been rained down into our brain over 2,000 years through these infiltrators into early Christianity. And we've also got to get rid of the leaven of the Pharisees that have infiltrated rabbinical Judaism and lied to them about this whole concept of Metatron and the false teachings regarding Yeshua. It's leaven. We've got to transform that from chametz into tzemech and from seor into rosh, the head. So this is part of this article. Metatron is not Enoch. It says, I can't read that Latin, but it says, the Lord alone guided them, and there was no alien God with them. So this is Deuteronomy 32:12. There's all kinds of teachings regarding Metatron about this. It's all wonderful stuff. This entire article is really interesting. I've read a lot about Enoch. I talk about it all the time because I recognise there's some problem with this teaching, and now it's all starting to make sense. This is the rain that didn't come down on Pharaoh, but it's been raining down on us and creating this whole war of Gog and Magog within our own minds. We're going to have to lose everything we thought we knew about Yeshua HaMashiach. We're going to have to lose all that indoctrination that's nothing more than the leaven of the Pharisees, even when it appears to us as the light, an angel of light. It's possibly being false, some kind of demonic teaching, pharaonic, metatronic, demonic, evil teaching that's corrupted the entire of us. It's very difficult to know what the actual truth is. What is the bread that came down from heaven that we should have been eating? What is this simple bread that came down from heaven? The true teaching of Yeshua HaMashiach. This is what we need to cry out for now. We need a revelation of the bread from heaven, because what we've had instead is some fake leavened bread. Right, the Lord alone guided them, and there was no alien God with them. Deuteronomy 32:12. God went before his people in a pillar of fire and of cloud in order to be the metator of the root and the protector of the people, demonstrating the future mysteries of Christ. Okay, so this is how it's connected in Metatron, even within these kinds of teachings. Where is this teaching from again? It's from here, look. An almost exact parallel is found in the writings of Veracundus of Junca, mid-6th century. So this is very ancient. It's making a parallel between Metator and Christ, Moshiach. Okay. Which Vilna Gaon says they're one of the same. The angel who guides along the way, and Yeshua who calls himself the way, Haderech. It's one of the same concepts. But is it the truth? Was Yeshua HaNatzri, this cosmic Christ, this Metatronic, massive archangel called Metatron, the second in command, the voice of God, the scribe of God, the right hand of God, lesser Yahweh? There's all kinds of names and appellations from it. It goes on and on and on and on. He was basically worshipped. Metatron within Judaism, there's aspects to be found within Judaism. He was definitely worshipped. It would appear as an entity independent of God, just as Yeshua has been. Something you can point to, that you can independently pray to, becomes a false God. Okay? There's no question that we needed Moshiach ben Yosef. He was sent by Hashem himself. But what is the truth regarding him? What is the true teachings, the bread that was rained down from heaven, and not the bread, the rain that was really the hail, the hail that should have hit Pharaoh, that ceased, that then turned into rain, that will be rained down for the Gog and Magog war. We've been fighting this war a long time, it would appear. Both testifying God going ahead of the people described in Exodus 13:21 as an act as a metator. A metator is somebody in the army a Roman army that went around and scouted out the land to make sure that it was safe and you could follow after them. They guided obviously the company or the army. That's the basic meaning behind metator, and it is used. If you go read this, it's a very extensive text. You'll find out the etymology and things like that regarding this whole concept of Metatron. Every time I study it, I read something new, and it's just another piece of the jigsaw puzzle. It's a massive jigsaw puzzle to try and figure it out. Let's go back anyway. Right, so this is a lot to think about. I know there's a lot to think about here. I would suggest you at least watch some of the videos around Metatron, or certainly read like that article that I've just pulled up. There's a lot in there. It is a really good article. There are other things, there are other really good articles about Metatron, but that to me has been the article that I've enjoyed reading the most, that I've got the most out of, and I've pulled out all the sources for myself and analysed them for myself. That's why it's taken me a long time. Like I say, this rain that stayed up there has caused me to go down a few big rabbit holes. Okay, so the rain that did not come down, we're going to be looking at this. It's connected. Just wait a minute. Right, just had it in slightly wrong order. And the rain did not come down to earth. So if we take the regular and the mispagadol and add them together, they come to 2,584. The ordinal and the mispagadol ordinal come to 316, which is Yeshua. The whole, like we've just done, Sefer Toldoth Yeshua. Okay, it's all leaven that's going to cause us to, have a false concept of the Moshiach. It's leaven. It's this ore that needs turning into the rosh, the head. It's the chametz that needs turning into the tzamech. It's the lie that needs to be transformed into the truth. Okay, so let's have a look at this. This whole concept of Yeshu. There's a purpose in everything. Zoni Yote Wawe, ultimately, as technical as what you get with all these searches and all this information and all this meat, all this Egyptian meat. We can't keep things simple, can we? We want it all complicated. We're thinking about this. We want the meaty stuff, don't we? Want to sink our teeth into some teachings. We want to be led down the rabbit hole. We want all this, because this is how we are made. We're wonderfully made, and we're very inquisitive and we're very curious, aren't we? We like rummaging through all these teachings to find some little gems hidden here, there, and everywhere. So there is that side of our nature which we do like to be challenged mentally and cerebrally. We interest in stuff that actually interests us. So all these teachings serve as a purpose. But the more I think about the complex stuff that I study, and I mean there's people that study much, much greater complex stuff than myself, but the more complex it gets, the more simple it gets. Sometimes you can be handed simplicity to you on a plate like the bread from heaven, right? And then there's another kind of matzo that you get. I don't know whether anybody's ever done this, but I've done it loads, right? I make challah every week. And sometimes I never follow a recipe. I just like throwing it in at 100 miles an hour. Come Shabbat, Friday you usually make the challah. And I always do it by guess. Have you done it that many times? I can pretty much make good challah bread, but sometimes I get it wrong. And sometimes I'll put too much leaven in, or sometimes I'll overprove it. That's one thing. I'll put it into the oven, to prove it, but I'll have set the oven too high because I usually bake something beforehand and then just try to cool the oven down quick enough to bake the bread cause the bread to rise. But it overproves it, right? But if you put too much yeast in to flour, it just basically explodes and it nearly goes flat. And I was thinking to myself, it's as if this leavened bread that we've got is so crammed, packed full of leaven. that it's actually become flat matzo bread again. It's overproved itself. It's like bread that's puffed itself up to such grandeur that it's actually exploded in and itself and just gone to this flat, watery bread. You know, I've literally opened my oven door and the challah bread is like flattened out. It's just like exploded with all the leaven, over leavened and overheated whilst it's proving. And it's just become this like big bubbles of leaven and then flattened out bread. And I'm thinking, you know, there's a teaching in this. It's as if there's that much leaven in this bread that we're eating. It's that saturated with lies and, you know, all the horrible stuff. It's so bizarre. There's so many rabbit holes. There's so much mystery. There's so much to unravel. It's like bread that's totally burst itself to the point it's just gone flat again. It's unleavened bread that's leavened itself out by the sheer weight of the leaven in it. It's become flat bread. And you know, and there's a really wonderful mystery in this. Because sometimes you can have so much wisdom and you can have gained so much insight in terms of Torah. You can have explored so many different mystical areas and secret teachings and different doctrines and been looking at all the, you know, all the other religions like what I do and, you know, even hieroglyphics and what were Egyptian gods and Roman gods and Greek gods. You can get right into it, unearthing all this stuff. But, you know, for all that mystery, for all that teaching, for all that leaven, for all that meat, it basically, something in it causes you to simplify things at the same time. Because I have three sayings in my life that are the absolute pinnacle of my knowledge of God, and my connection to God is not through all these mysterious teachings. I have three simple things that I can repeat at any time that create this attachment and nearness to God as I'm able to perceive Him at the absolute pinnacle, that are so basic and simple, but only my soul knows this path. You know, this connection. It's a profound connection between me and Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh, and it's just so simple. So I'm thinking, it doesn't matter where I go on my spiritual journeys, what heights of wisdom I explore, it always comes back to true simplicity. You know, the true bread from heaven, the real nourishing stuff. And it's basically things like, no matter what situation I'm in, you know, like the real challenges of life and the tests of life, you won't remember this wisdom. It will be the simple, direct paths to the infinite one that you access. You've got to be able to access immediately at all times wherever you are. You've got to have that portal. You've got to have that instant connection. So 3 things, simple, instant connections to me. One saying is, there is only Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh, nothing else beside Him, Ein Od Milvado. It's a direct portal. It's just a saying. When I say those words, there is nothing but Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh. There's nothing beside Him. It just, wherever I am in the world, whatever I am suffering, if I meditate on those words, there is nothing beside Him. Everything else is nullified except for His glory. In an instant, however confused I am, however challenged, however tested, however dark it appears, there is only Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh, nothing else beside Him. I am straight away in the presence of the King. It's a simple, direct path to the infinite. Another one is everything will work out for good. Gamzu Latova. I think about these words. I remember Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh. I know He's only good. I don't know why I'm going through all this rubbish. It will only be for good. It is only for good. I get a direct portal to the Infinite One. And it's so simple. It's because I have perfect faith that what I'm saying is the truth. It's about faith. These words are an absolute reflection of our faith. So that's another one. Everything will turn out for good. There is only Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, nothing else beside him. And then the third one is, I actually think about that one. There is only cause for joy. There is only cause for joy. If we could perceive what Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh is accomplishing through our lives in utter perfection of his plan, which is only good to bring us to that place where we're able to receive a revelation of his oneness, we would be joyous. We're not always perceiving it, but if we connect and we have the faith to know there's only cause for joy, because only his plan is getting executed, and it's all good. It's all for our ultimate benefit. This is temporary, whatever we've got to go through, it's only temporary. I have perfect faith when I say that there's only cause for joy, even when things are not that nice for us to go through. There's ultimately only cause for joy. And sometimes we do disconnect from that. We don't have an immediate portal. There's a concealment. Sometimes we've just got to utter the words. Like I used to say, this will turn for good. This will turn for good. I was a long way off. And I used to say it anyway. Because I did believe it even though I didn't feel it. I knew it in my mind. I didn't feel it in my heart. Eventually those penetrated into my heart and those words became real. And the things that I was saying, it will turn for good. When my heart was like a quivering wreck, but I was saying the words anyway because I'd thought and I'd reasoned. I know this will be for good, even though I don't feel it. My body is a trembling wreck. It's frightened about the ordeal that it's going through. It's terrified and traumatized by this experience that it's experiencing, but it will all turn for good. I spoke the words and it came to be. It turned for good. So as complicated as this rain has got, it's as if the bread has overproved and burst in on itself and it becomes basic matzo again. Flat. It's so full with 11, it becomes flat and simple. All of its own. That's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't matter how much wisdom that you've got. It will, at the end, it comes down to what is the simple ways that you have direct access to Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh above. And they're my three for you. And like I said, I didn't always have direct access. I was far away, but I said it anyway. Say the words, there's only cause for joy. You will see those words manifest in your life. I did. Say it will only turn for good, even when everything about your body is a trembling wreck and it doesn't thoroughly believe it yet. It hasn't yet manifested that reality. But you say it and it will. There is only Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh and nothing else beside him. It's the ultimate absolute truth. Say it enough times, you will see it manifest. It's not magic. It's just reality breaking in on us. And it's by divine providence that we say these things anyway. We don't just accidentally say certain words. By divine providence we are saying the words, there is only Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh and nothing else beside him. By his divine providence, he's put those words in our mouths to be able to plant seeds that will one day manifest, that we will reap what we have sown. It's all by divine providence. You open your mouth even today and say these. It's not magic, it's providence. There's a difference. So let's get round to this then. The angel who redeemed, this is filled. That means each letter filled. This is the angel who redeemed. This is the angel of Yaakov, by the way. May the angel who redeemed me from all harm bless the youths, and may they be called by my name and the name of my father Abraham and Yitzhak, and may they multiply abundantly like fish in the midst of the land. Genesis 48:16. Look at these different fillings out. So this is for Asiya, the world of Asiya, Yetzirah, Bria, and Atziluth. They all add up. All the 4 fillings add up to 2,584, exactly the same as, and the rain did not come down to earth. Now, there's obviously a concept of an angel that guides us that's true, that guides us along the way, but then there's an angel who redeems, and this is the one we want. We want the angel of the redemption to come for us now. So may the angel who redeemed me from all harm bless the youths, and may they be called by my name and the names of my father Abraham and Yitzhak, and may they multiply abundantly like fish in the midst of the land. Okay, again, that's all mysterious stuff. But these numbers are very mysterious too, because that's the filling out of the angel who redeemed, filled at Malkuth, where the He is filled with a He and the Vav is filled with a Vav. The angel who redeemed filled at Yetzirah, where the He is filled with the Aleph, the Vav is filled with the Aleph. That's at Bria, where the He is filled with the Yud and the Vav is filled with the Yud. And that's in Atziluth. Sorry, where the He is filled with a Yud and the Vav would be filled with an Aleph, but there is no Vav. Then this is the He is filled with a Yud and the Vav is filled with the Yud, but there's no He, so these two are the same. Okay, so they're the different fillings out for the different worlds that represent the name Yod He, Waw He. Okay, so that's the He, that's the Vav, that's the upper He, and that's the Yod. So first of all, we've got this spelling of Ma'aroth, which is defective. Let's go back. Ma'aroth from Genesis 1:14 talks about the luminary. It's got 2 missing Vavs. If we add back those 2 missing Vavs, we get 653, which is both of these fillings. 653 plus 68 ordinal for this comes to 721, which is the square ordinal of Yaakov. Yaakov represents Tifereth, okay, which is also representing the name Yoteh Wahweh, by the way. It's all wonderful stuff. There's loads of stuff I could go into. I'm just going to go through it briefly because there's lots of Kabbalistic stuff that you could talk about with all this. But plus, this angel was the angel that redeemed Yaakov. Who's Yaakov? Yaakov is Israel, the 12 tribes. We want the angel that redeems all of Israel, Yosef and Yehuda. So Moshe, this is the square ordinal of Moshe, comes to 635. 635. That's the level of Yetzirah, the filling out the angel who redeemed is Moshe. It's 5 times 127. Moshe represents Da'ath, by the way. What's 127? That's the ordinal of the filling out of Yeshua at the level of Atziluth, where the Vav is filled with a Yud. It's all incredibly mysterious and wonderful. So that's the unity between Moshe and Yeshua, because they are one soul. Different levels of the Moshiach. They're both the Moshiach. Different levels will come again as Moshiach ben Dawid. Yosef made himself known to his brothers, 643. 643. A testimony of Yosef. So this is the Eitz Yosef, isn't it? The stick of Yosef. The revelation of the name Yoteh Wahweh above the letter of the Torah, 643, the angel who redeemed. That testimony of Yosef, the name of Yoteh Wahweh as revealed through Yeshua, is what redeemed the children of Israel from Edomite slavery. Exactly the same as Yosef made himself known, by the way. Look, regular and ordinal come to 746. This gets quite interesting. So we've got the matriarchs. All 4 matriarchs here. Sarah, Rivka, Leah, Rachel. The square ordinal of them all, added up, comes to 2,434. If we add on to that the ordinal of them also, 150, and the square ordinal comes to 2,584. The angel who redeemed, which is totally contrary and opposite the rain that did not come down to earth. Because ultimately, this represents the final letter here. The final letter here is the literal interpretation of the Torah, but the literal interpretation of the Torah must be filled with the revelation, the secret revelation of the Torah, for it to be raised up. So the matriarchs represent the Malkuth, the literal level of the Torah that needs to be raised up with the true secret inner meanings, the true bread that came down from heaven, the true teachings regarding Yeshua HaMoshiach, Yeshua HaNatzri, Moshiach ben Yosef, not the fake teachings that puff us up and, cause problems, cause a lack of rectification. 2,584 related to the angel who redeemed, and wholly opposite this. It's phenomenal stuff. And then finally we've got the concealment and revelation. So there's this system of a concealment and revelation. The concealment of his name, the revelation of his name, the Hagar, that's the whole system of ascent to descent, from infinite to finite, from spiritual into physicality. It's got a square regular of 2,584, exactly the same as this. So this is the whole system of revelation and concealment, the whole system with which Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh manifests himself within physical creation. And it comes to 8 times 323. And this phrase here has got a Mispah Gadol of 3,230, 10 times this. And this is connected to the whole concept of Metatron again. Train a child according to his way. Even when he grows old, he will not turn away from it. Okay, and I've had lots to talk about that from before because this Chanok this is part of the false teachings that Metatron is Chanok, Enoch. And he's also called the lad. He was once a human that became like this meta-archangel, a little bit like Yeshua. He was a man, but then he's become this super angel, second in command of God, just like what Metatron has. He was once a man who walked with God, and then he became this super meta-archangel. What of that concept is the truth and what is of the lie? We need to be able to discern, because one will lead us to a concept of the false Moshiach, and we will be defeated in the Gog and Magog war, and one will lead us, the truth will lead us to a victory. So we need to be able to discern the bread from heaven from this other teaching that's rained down upon us. Okay, I'll just show you where it mentions about the bread from heaven in this week's Torah portion being rained down, because it's very significant. Okay, so this is actually today's Torah portion. Well, actually the sun has set now, so it was today's. The entire community of the children of Israel complained against Moshe and against Aaron in the desert. The children of Israel said to them, "If only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by pots of meat, when we ate bread to our fill. For you have brought us into the desert to starve this entire congregation to death." So the Lord said to Moshe, "Behold, I am going to rain down mamtir lochem lechem. I'm going to rain down for you bread from heaven. The people shall go out and gather what is needed for the day, so that I can test them whether or not they will follow my teaching." Whether they will follow my teaching. But Torati im lo. So there's always a test of loyalty. There's always a test of loyalty. Are we going to be loyal to that we know regarding Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh, or are we going to be seduced into thinking something else about him and complaining about him? And I'm pretty sure it mentioned about here, look. It says, "I have heard the complaints of the children of Israel. Speak to them, saying, in the afternoon you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be sated with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God." And it came to pass in the evening that the quails went up and covered the camp, and in the morning was a layer of dew around the camp. The layer of dew went up, and behold, on the surface of the desert a fine bare substance, as fine as frost on the ground. Okay, so they didn't like this disgusting bread, did they? This bread from heaven. They wanted the meat. But anyway, there's all kinds of mystery involved in that. And ultimately, it doesn't matter what we desire to eat. Because like I say, I'm somebody who's interested. I like the meaty teachings myself. But ultimately, we've got to be brought back to that simple bread from heaven, haven't we? There's only Yod-Heh-Waw, nothing else beside him. Everything turns for good. And there's only cause for joy. And, these are the things that sustain us, and God loves us. Sometimes that's all we need to know. And with that, I will say shalom. Please subscribe and share. Thank you.